Welcome back to the Primitive Camping and Bushcraft Podcast. Today is Fundamental Fridays, and we use this time to go over fundamental skills that you can use to make your primitive camping trips better, more fun, and more interesting. So hang tight, pull up a chair, and let's get to it.
According to the dictionary, shelter is defined as a place of giving temporary protection from bad weather or danger. When you're in a survival situation, cover from the elements is a high priority. Start looking for shelter as soon as possible. We're going to go over shelter site selection a little bit later in this video, but right now let's discuss clothing. Your clothing is considered your first layer of shelter. Depending on your environment, your clothing protects you from sun, insects, wind, rain. And I'm not going to go into the seasonal clothing aspect, but still at a minimum, you should dress for the occasion of the environment that you're going to participate in outdoor activities. Wearing long pants and a lightweight long sleeve shirt whenever you venture into the woods is highly recommended. A few of the main reasons is that it gives you protection from the insects, the sun, and the wind. You want to wear relatively loose-fitting long sleeve clothing, which allows you to stay cooler in hotter environments and warmer in cooler environments. In hotter environments, removing your clothing will cause you to lose sweat and require more sweat to cool you off, possibly contributing to dehydration. So when it comes to survival, it's okay to be stinky. Now let's discuss the pros and cons of different clothing materials. Cotton clothing is incredible in warm weather environments. One characteristic of cotton is that it soaks up any moisture. I've read in a couple of survival blogs where wet cotton t-shirts do not protect against sunburn, and by living in Alaska for 4 years, I found out firsthand that once cotton gets wet, it loses all of its insulated properties. Damp cotton clothing must be dried out in colder environments because left on in the cold, cotton can lead to hypothermia. And yes, it is still possible to catch hypothermia in the summer. Although rare, it can still happen. Cotton is excellent in warm weather environments and not the best in cold climates, but believe it or not, wool is ideal for either. Wool is highly breathable, it wicks moisture away from your body, and it keeps you dry. It's naturally antibacterial and helps keep you from getting stinky. My favorite thing about wool is that it keeps you warm even when it's wet. Wool retains its insulated properties when completely soaked. As an added bonus, wool is anti-wrinkle, so you always look your best even in a survival situation. The only downfall to wool is that it's heavy, and when it's wet, it's very cumbersome. Now, there are many types of other synthetic materials out there that have their own pros and cons, but for the sake of time, we're just going to cover these natural materials for now. Now that we know the definition of shelter and we have taken a look at clothing as our first layer of shelter, let's dive into shelter site selection. According to the U.S. Army Survival Handbook, when considering shelter site selection, 2 prerequisites must be met. Number 1, it must contain the materials you need to make the type of shelter you need. Number 2, it must be large enough and level enough for you to lie down comfortably. Now, on the site that you selected, you must also consider if it's suitable for signaling. Does it provide protection from wild animals? Are there any dead trees that could fall? And is it free from insects, reptiles, and poisonous plants? You must also remember the problems that could arise in your environment, such as avoiding flash flood areas in the foothills, avoid avalanche and rockslide areas in the mountainous terrain, and avoid sites near bodies of water that are below the high water mark. Other aspects of site selection that you want to consider are your proximity to drinking water and your availability of firewood. You don't want to walk a mile just to collect some water to walk a mile back to boil it. The same goes with collecting firewood. Dragging firewood back to camp could be tiring, and you don't want to use up all your calories collecting firewood. One crucial and often overlooked aspect of site selection that I just mentioned is the presence of dead trees, better known as widowmakers. Most people look around the camp to make sure they don't have one near them, but they don't think to look 50 or 60 feet away that could fall on them as well. When the wind picks up, the dead tree can potentially be blown over, falling into your shelter, killing or injuring you. Pay attention to dead standing trees in relation to your site. Now, you could take this dead tree, you could push it over or knock it down, you could cut it down, you can add to your firewood collection. Remember, safety is paramount when selecting your site. Make sure there are no dead trees close to your shelter. Your proximity to water will contribute to increased encounters with animals and those notorious little vampires that everybody knows, mosquitoes. Being closer to water will allow you to fish, set snares, catch frogs, snakes, and just overall increase your ability to collect food during a survival situation. But also keep in mind that the closer to water also brings predators. Mosquitoes and biting insects can be a considerable nuisance. The best way to control them is with a very smoky fire. Burning certain weeds and trees helps control insects, for example, dog fennel and American beautyberry, which they both grow throughout the North American continent, helps control insects. You can rub these weeds onto your skin or your clothing, or you can lay dog fennel down in the coals of a fire to give off a smoke that really helps. Burning pine and other resinous trees can help control insects as well. When selecting the site for your shelter, you want to make sure that you're not in an area where flash floods will make you run for higher ground in the middle of the night. You don't want to select a location where water can flood your shelter. When you choose a site near the water, you want to be able to see a high water mark on the trees. This mark is from previous flooding, so try to select a site above this high water mark. If at all possible, in mountainous regions, you do not want to choose a shelter near an area prone to avalanches during the wintertime and areas that could potentially produce rock slides. Mountainous areas are very prone to falling rocks, so try to be very careful when selecting a shelter location near a mountainous area. Shelter is defined as a place of giving temporary protection from bad weather or danger. Shelter can be all natural or man-made. For natural shelters, rock formations, caves, and hollow trees come to mind, but in South Mississippi, you don't just crawl up inside a hollow log, especially during the spring or summer months. And there's really not a lot of caves, so making a shelter out of natural material would help provide some protection from the elements. Making shelter from natural material really isn't that difficult. All we need is a sapling and a bunch of old fallen limbs and leaves. A survival leaf shelter, whether it's a lean-to or debris hut, an A-frame or an opposing lean-to, helps us stay dry in the rain. It gives us relief from the wind and creates a microenvironment that, coupled with a fire, can keep you warm even on very cold nights. Now we're going to push this in as far as you can into the ground. Now this shelter will give you some protection from the wind for sure, and some protection from the rain. But the thicker you have the leaves and the pine needles and all that piled up on the backside of this, the more rain protection you will get. Now all you have to do is collect you some more leaves for your bedding, put it down, and you have your nice little comfortable bed. If you wanted to turn this into an A-frame style shelter, just repeat the steps on the opposite side. An A-frame or opposing lean-to offers more protection and warmth and is better for colder environments. Let's discuss one of the most convenient items to use for your shelters, the tarp. Tarps can be used for so many things, from shelter to making a hammock to collecting and storing your drinking water. I use this lightweight packable tarp practically every time I venture into the woods. Tarps these days are very lightweight, highly waterproof, and extremely versatile. Tarps were first used in sailing. Canvas sheets were coated with tar to cover cargo on overseas voyages and used to protect cargo from seawater and the elements. Advancements were made with oilcloth, making the tarp extremely lightweight and waterproof. Presently, lightweight, waterproof tarps can be found from a few $100s all the way down to a few dollars at your local department store. The price is really dependent on the material. Tarps come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, but the one I find myself using most often is the DD 3x3. Now, the 3x3 is 3 meters by 3 meters, which roughly equates to 9 feet by 9 feet, or for those that want to be exact, is 9.84 feet by 9.84 feet. What I love about this tarp system is that it has 19 attachment points for guy lines and stake points or tie-outs. In order to use a tarp as a shelter, you're going to need some sort of cordage. Cordage is just a fancy word for rope. Most bushcrafters or survivalists use paracord or tarred and twisted bank line. I personally use the number 36 bank line because it's very strong with a breaking strength of 320 pounds, and you get more bang for your buck, or you get your money's worth. It can be used for practically anything from lashing, fishing, shelter building, bow drill. In order to make a shelter with a tarp, you need to know a few knots so we can make our ridgeline. A ridgeline is the highest point of your shelter. Think of a house. The top of your roof is called the ridge. The ridge is where all the other rafters tie into to create your roof. We will use this ridgeline for 4 out of the 5 shelters I'm going to demonstrate. Before we begin making our ridgeline, we're going to need a few sticks roughly 3 inches long to make what's called a toggle. A toggle is basically used as an attachment point. Now, I've made these out of some sticks I found on the ground and just rounded the ends and cut them roughly 3 inches. As you can see, they're roughly the diameter of my little finger. Now, going back to the ridgeline, I use the overhand loop knot on one end of my cordage. An overhand loop knot is simply an overhand knot tied in a bight. It is among the simplest of loops. Simply fold your line over on one side like this and then make an overhand knot. This is called an overhand loop knot. Some people will say use a bowline knot, but it doesn't matter. Just use whatever you are more comfortable with, and each one of them will get it done. All right, so now what you want to do is you want to take your loop end and you want to run it around the tree. This is called the running end, the standing end, the working end, and you want to take and stick this through this loop just like this and insert your toggle just like that. Now you're able to cinch this down on that tree and it is not going to go anywhere. Just like that. So this end is secure. Now we're going to run this end all the way to the next tree. Now this end of your ridge line is secured to the tree. It's not going to go anywhere until you remove that toggle. Now run your bank line all the way to the other tree and let's make a trucker's hitch. This knot, the trucker hitch, will allow you to tighten your ridge line and is also used to secure cargo to the roof racks of your vehicles and cargo trailers. It's very handy when you need to pull tension on your string or your rope. First, you want to loop your string around your tree, just like this. Then you want to come out about 12 to 16 inches, and then you're going to loop it around your hand like so. Then you're going to reach back through and grab that string and pull up just like that. What you've created is a loop. Now we're going to take the end of your string and run it through this loop. And then that will allow us to put tension on this ridge line and tighten it up. Now this is going to make this string, the ridge line, tighter. Now all you have to do is just come over here and you can wrap this around the whole string. 1, 2. Now on your next turnaround, you just feed this back through this loop. And there you go. Tighten it off just like that. Now you left a little loop here with a little tag. You just pull this and your whole string could come undone. So let's tighten that back up. Now I like to set my ridge line about 5 feet high. For me, that's about shoulder height. That's it. We've successfully made a ridge line. This ridge line can be used for numerous shelter configurations. Now we need to cut 2 short pieces of bank line and we're going to make loops out of them. And those loops are going to become our attachment points for our tarp. Simply take your piece of string and make an overhand loop knot. And now you have a loop. On the ridge line, hold your loop up against the back side like this. Loop it around 2 times. 1, 2. Then pull it tight. And it should make what is called a Prusik knot. The Prusik knot allows you to adjust where you want the knot to be. But once you put tension on the knot, it locks into place and will not move. Let's put another one on. I already put both of these on here. Now let's get ready to start making our shelter. You need tent stakes also, and depending on the country, you call them pegs or stakes. You can make them out of sticks at your campsite, or depending on your situation, you could carry some metal store-bought ones. For this video, I'm using the ones that are metal store-bought. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to make 5 different shelters with your tarp, which are relatively easy to make and provide adequate protection from the elements. The first 4 require the ridgeline, which we have just made. The last one does not. The first shelter we're going to make is the most simplistic and easiest one to make, the lean-to. It provides decent shelter from the rain and provides shade. You will set this shelter up depending on which way the wind is blowing to block the wind. Start by attaching one corner of your ridgeline by inserting the Prusik loop through the tie-out point and insert your toggle. Then do the same on the other side. Now pull your Prusik loop until it is tight. Go to the back end of your shelter and pull the corner tight and stake it down. Do this again on the other side or the other corner, and now you have created a lean-to shelter. The next shelter is called an A-frame shelter. You want to lay the tarp lengthways across the ridge line directly in the center of the tarp. Insert the Prusik loop and the toggles just like you did before on both sides, pulling very tight. Now stake down the 4 corners of the tarp to the ground, and you have a shelter that is more protected from the wind than a simple lean-to, and it's more protected from the rain or snow. The next shelter is very similar to the A-frame, but it's called the diamond fly. The A-frame and the diamond fly are both used to cover hammocks, but work just as well on the ground. First, lay the tarp corner to corner over your ridgeline. Use the Prusik loop and the toggle just like the 2 shelters before and make it tight. Next, take the 2 wings and stake them down to the ground. This will make a diamond shape and allows for a little more coverage than the A-frame. The Adirondack shelter is traditionally a 3-sided log structure, but you can manipulate a tarp to form this style shelter, which will offer you protection from the elements from 3 sides, and it's great for winter camping in front of a fire. The first step is to lay one corner of your tarp over the ridge line. Now attach a toggle to your tarp by inserting the Prusik loop through the top tie-out point. Next, go around to the back of the tarp and stake out the tie-out points that are directly opposite of the toggles. Now tuck the far corner of the tarp in, and this will give you sort of a small ground sheet. Then stake down the 2 front corner tie-out points, which will make the walls for your shelter. Flip the top over, and then attach a string to the guy line in the middle of the top of the tarp. Tie this to a tree, and this will add dimension and give you room inside your shelter. Now this type of shelter reflects heat towards your body. If you have a fire in front of you, it is perfect for winter camping and colder environments. Now we're going to make a plow point shelter. The plow point is extremely easy to make, and it can be set up very quickly. This shelter only requires 1 piece of cordage to set it up. I've even set this shelter up without any cordage at all. You do not need a ridge line for this shelter. You will also need a minimum of 3 tent stakes to secure the tarp to the ground. In the diamond fashion, take one corner of your tarp and secure it to a tree over your head. I like to go about 7 feet high or so. Using your stakes, pull the furthest end out as tight as you can get it. Now come to the front of either side and pull it tight and stake it down, and repeat with the last corner. What you have created is an easy, fast, and very effective shelter that resembles an old plow or a diamond. Now that we know what shelter is, how to select our site, and how to make our shelter in various different configurations and even with natural materials, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time. God bless you.